The map showed 847 stars. Each one belonged to the Vorathi Dominion. Each one had been taken by force. High Commander Nalrek traced his claw across the holographic display, watching conquered worlds spin in silent obedience. 3 centuries of expansion, 12,000 warships, 214 species erased from existence because they refused to kneel. The Vorathi had never lost. They were tall creatures, standing nearly 3 meters high with scaled skin the color of dried blood. Their eyes held no warmth. Their empire held no mercy. They consumed worlds the way fire consumes forests, and they felt nothing but satisfaction when the burning was complete. Today, Nalrek prepared for another conquest. The outer spiral awaited. 23 inhabited worlds had formed a desperate alliance, pooling their pathetic fleets in hopes of survival. They called themselves the Coalition of Free Worlds. Nalrek called them his next meal. His tactical officer approached with a data tablet. High Commander, intelligence reports an anomaly near the border.
Speak.
A single vessel from an uncharted system. The inhabitants call their world Earth. Nalrek did not look up from his map. One ship. Yes, High Commander. It has been observing our fleet movements for several days. Then it will observe its own destruction when we pass. Continue preparations. The officer hesitated. The vessel has not fled, Commander. It remains in position. Now Nalrek looked up. Curiosity, not concern. In his long life, he had seen many species attempt courage. All of them had learned the same lesson. Let them watch. Let them carry the memory of our armada back to their little world. Fear is a useful teacher. 3,000 warships departed from the Vorathi staging ground. They moved through space like a swarm of predators, blocking out the stars themselves. At the front flew the Eternal Silence, Nalrek's flagship, a vessel so massive it could carry smaller warships inside its hull. Their target was Malveth Prime, a peaceful agricultural world of 9 billion inhabitants. The Malvethians were gentle creatures who grew food for a dozen neighboring systems. They had no military. They had no weapons. They had sent ambassadors to beg for mercy. Nalrek had executed those ambassadors on his bridge. He mounted their heads on spikes as decorations. This was the Vorathi way. Mercy was weakness. Compassion was disease. Only strength mattered, and strength meant the power to take whatever you wanted. The fleet traveled for 6 days through the void between stars. On the 7th day, sensors detected something ahead. The Earth vessel had moved. It now sat directly in their path. Nalrek leaned forward in his command throne. The human ship was large by ordinary standards, stretching over 2 kilometers from bow to stern. But next to Vorathi capital ships, it looked like a child standing before giants. They are transmitting, the communications officer reported. Let me hear it. A human voice filled the bridge, female, calm, speaking in a language that the translation systems rendered perfectly. Vorathi Fleet, this is Captain Amara Singh of the INS Reckoning. You are entering protected space. Turn back now. Laughter erupted across the bridge. Protected space. One ship claiming to protect an entire region of the galaxy. The absurdity was almost entertaining. Nalrek opened a return channel. Human, I am High Commander Nalrek of the Vorathi Dominion. You are addressing a fleet of 3,000 warships. We have conquered 800 worlds. We have destroyed species older than your civilization. What exactly do you intend to do? A pause, then the human spoke again. I intend to stop you. More laughter from the Vorathi crew, but Nalrek did not laugh. Something in the human's voice bothered him. She did not sound afraid. She did not sound desperate. She sounded like someone who had already accepted what was coming and made peace with it. You have courage, Nalrek admitted. Foolish courage, but courage nonetheless. Surrender now and I will make your crew slaves instead of corpses. This is my only offer. Declined. Then you choose death. I choose to stand in your way. What happens after that is up to you. Nalrek cut the channel. He stared at the small human vessel on his display, this tiny obstacle in the path of his unstoppable armada. One ship against 3,000. It was not a battle. It was barely an inconvenience. And yet, he felt something he had not felt in over a century of conquest. He felt curious. All ships, Nalrek commanded, destroy the human vessel, then continue to Malvith Prime. 3,000 warships powered their weapons. 3,000 targeting systems locked onto a single target. The first volley would reduce the human ship to atoms. The INS Reckoning did not move. It did not flee. It did not even raise its shields. It simply waited. And then it began broadcasting again. Not words this time. Data, names, 214 names, every species the Vorathi had exterminated, every civilization they had erased, every world they had burned. The human captain's voice returned, quiet but clear. We remember them, and we are here to answer for them. Nulrik snarled, fire. The void lit up with weapons fire. Thousands of beams and missiles streaked toward the lone human vessel. And the battle of the void began. Nobody on the Vorathi flagship could explain what happened next. The weapons fire that should have destroyed the human vessel simply stopped. Energy beams bent around the hull like water flowing past a stone. Missiles detonated early, caught by invisible barriers that sensors could not identify. Plasma rounds splashed against armor that seemed to drink the heat and grow stronger. The INS Reckoning should have died in the first 3 seconds. It did not. High Commander Nalrek gripped the arms of his command throne. His claws dug into the metal, leaving deep scratches. Around him, tactical officers screamed data at each other, trying to understand the impossible. Their shields are not standard configuration, someone shouted. The frequency shifts with every impact. Armor composition unknown. It appears to be adapting. Commander, we are reading power output that should not be possible from a vessel that size. Nalrek silenced them with a raised hand. He watched the human ship emerge from the storm of weapons fire, scorched but intact. It moved slowly, deliberately, turning to face the Vorathi fleet head-on. Then it fired back. The first Vorathi cruiser exploded without warning. Its shields did not flicker. Its armor did not buckle. One moment it existed. The next moment it was an expanding cloud of debris. Panic spread through the fleet communications. Commanders demanded answers. Tactical officers reported weapon signatures that did not match any known technology. The human projectiles seemed to pass through shields as if they were not there. The human energy beams ignored armor completely. In the first 10 minutes, 47 Vorathi warships died. Nalrek found his voice. Concentrate fire, 200 ships, overlapping targeting, destroy that vessel. The order went out. 200 warships, each one capable of burning a city to ash, focused there. Combined firepower on a single target. The reckoning disappeared behind a wall of light and destruction. When the barrage ended, Nalrek expected to see nothing but atoms. Instead, he saw the human ship still fighting. Its port shields had failed. Atmosphere vented from 3 decks. Fires burned along its hull, but its weapons continued firing and more Vorathi ships continued dying. Impossible, whispered Nalrek's tactical officer, a scaled creature named Furith who belonged to a conquered species. This is impossible. But it was happening. The reckoning began moving through the fleet rather than away from it. It used Vorathi ships as cover, forcing them to hold fire or risk hitting each other. When they did fire, the human vessel was already gone, sliding between battleships like a predator among confused prey. Nalrek studied the tactical display. He had fought 1,000 battles. He knew strategy and tactics better than he knew his own reflection, and he began to notice something strange. The human ship was not fighting to kill. It targeted engines, leaving ships stranded but alive. It destroyed weapons arrays, leaving crews unharmed. It avoided reactor hits that would cause catastrophic explosions. The reckoning was fighting with precision that bordered on surgical. "They are holding back," Nalrek realized aloud. Furath turned to him. "Commander, the humans, they are not trying to destroy us, they are trying to stop us." Nalrek leaned forward. "They are fighting with restraint." This made no sense. In battle, you used every advantage. You killed as efficiently as possible. You did not spare enemies who would simply repair their ships and fight again. Restraint was foolishness. Unless the humans had a different goal entirely. 1 hour passed. The battle continued. The reckoning took more damage with each passing minute, but it refused to die. It refused to retreat. It simply kept fighting, kept moving, kept destroying Vorathi weapons and engines while minimizing casualties. 312 ships lost, 1 human vessel remaining. Nalrek opened communications again. The human captain appeared on screen. She was bleeding from a wound above her eye. Smoke filled the bridge behind her. Crew members worked frantically at damaged consoles. But she smiled. "Having trouble, Commander?" she asked. Nalrek felt anger rise in his throat. "You cannot win, you know this. Your ship is dying, your crew is." "Dying? Surrender now, and I will end this quickly." Captain Singh wiped blood from her face. "I am not trying to win, Commander. I am trying to teach." "Teach what?" "That you can be stopped, that you can be hurt, that you can bleed." She leaned closer to the camera. "Every species in this galaxy is watching, every conquered world, every slave, every survivor. They are all watching you struggle against one ship." Nalrek understood then. The realization hit him like a physical blow. This was never about military victory. The humans knew they could not defeat his fleet. They came anyway. They came to prove a point. They came to show the galaxy that the Vorathi were not invincible. "You are committing suicide," Nalrek said, "for nothing." "Not for nothing," Singh replied, "for hope." She cut the transmission. Nalrek stared at the dying human vessel on his display. 1 ship, 1 crew, sacrificing themselves to plant an idea in the minds of billions. The idea that resistance was possible. He should have been angry. He should have been dismissive. Instead, for the first time in 200 years of conquest, High Commander Nalrek felt something he had forgotten existed. He felt afraid. Not of the humans, not of their weapons or their technology. He was afraid of what would happen when the galaxy saw this battle. He was afraid of what it would inspire. 6 hours into the battle, a young Vorathi soldier named Krell made a mistake that would change the galaxy. He was not important, just a weapons technician on a mid-sized cruiser, one of thousands serving the Dominion. His job was simple: maintain the plasma cannons, follow orders, and never question anything. But after 6 hours of watching the impossible, Krell started recording. His personal communicator was not supposed to be active during combat. Recording was forbidden. Sharing footage outside official channels meant execution. Krell knew all of this. He recorded anyway. The footage spread through the fleet like a virus. Soldier to soldier, ship to ship. Encrypted messages passed through personal networks that commanders did not even know existed. By the 7th hour of battle, millions of Vorathi and conquered species crew members were watching the same thing. 1 human ship, burning and bleeding, refusing to fall. High Commander Nalrek knew nothing of this. He was too focused on the tactical display, watching his numbers drop with each passing minute. 891 ships destroyed or disabled. The reckoning had lost main propulsion 2 hours ago. It drifted now, a wounded animal surrounded by predators. Its shields flickered on and off like a dying heartbeat. Entire sections of the hull had been torn open to vacuum. But its weapons still fired. Every time the Vorathi closed in for the killing blow, the human vessel lashed out with whatever it had left. Missiles, beam weapons, short-range cannons that should not have worked with half the ship destroyed. The humans refused to die quietly. Inside the reckoning, Captain Amara Singh sat in a command chair covered with someone else's blood. Her bridge crew had been reduced by half. The navigation officer was dead. The weapons chief had both arms in emergency casts and was firing manually. The communications officer was a young woman barely out of training, keeping systems alive through sheer stubbornness. Singh's ribs were broken. She had not told anyone. "Status report," she said, her voice steady. "Forward weapons at 30%, the weapons chief reported. Aft weapons gone, shields maybe 10 minutes from complete failure. Crew casualties." The communications officer checked her display. Her hands shook slightly. 612 confirmed dead, over 200 wounded. Captain, we have less than 900 crew still functional. Singh nodded. The reckoning had launched with 2,000 souls aboard. She had known most of them would not survive. They had all known. They came anyway. Enemy fleet status: 891 ships destroyed or disabled, approximately 2,100 remaining. Singh almost smiled, almost, not bad for one ship. "Captain, they are preparing another assault, over 500 vessels moving into attack formation." This would be the end. Singh knew it. 500 ships concentrating fire on a vessel that could barely move. The reckoning might take a few more with it, but the math was simple. They were out of time. She activated the ship-wide communication. "All hands, this is the captain. You know our situation. You have fought beyond anything I could have asked. Whatever happens in the next few minutes, know that we have accomplished our mission. The galaxy is watching. They will remember what we did here. They will remember that one ship from one small world stood against an empire and refused to break." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "For those of you who can reach escape pods, go now. That is an order. We need survivors to carry our story forward. For those who cannot, for those who choose to stay, thank you. It has been the honor of my life to serve with you." She cut the channel. Across the dying ship, crew members made their choices. Some ran for escape pods. Others stayed at their stations. In the engine room, a young engineer named David kept the reactor stable with manual overrides, knowing he would not have time to reach safety. In the medical bay, doctors continued treating the wounded, even as the walls shook with impacts. The 500 Vorathi ships opened fire. The reckoning shuddered and screamed. Metal tore. Atmosphere escaped. Fires spread through corridors. The port side of the ship simply ceased to exist, sheared away by concentrated plasma fire. Singh held onto her chair and watched her display. Watched the enemy ships grow closer. Watched her own systems fail one by one. And then she gave one last order. "Launch the pods. Not escape pods, not survivors. Data pods, hundreds of small, fast, nearly undetectable drones scattered in every direction. Each one carried a complete recording of the battle. Each one would transmit to every receiver it could find for as long as its power lasted. The story of the reckoning would not die with its crew." Nalrek saw the pods launch. He screamed orders to intercept them, but they were too small, too fast, too numerous. His ships managed to destroy perhaps a third of them. The rest escaped into the void, carrying their cargo of truth to every corner of the galaxy. The human captain had one final surprise for him. Even dying, she was fighting. Even falling, she was winning. Nalrek watched the human ship begin to break apart under concentrated fire. He should have felt victory. He should have felt satisfaction. Instead, he felt like he was watching his empire crumble. Because he knew what those pods meant. Everyone would see this battle. Everyone would see the Vorathi struggle. Everyone would see that it was possible to fight back. And nothing would ever be the same. In a slave barracks on a mining world called Dust, a child watched a forbidden screen. She was 7 years old, born into bondage, the daughter of a species the Vorathi had conquered before her grandmother was born. She had never known freedom. She had never imagined it was possible. On the screen, a burning ship fought against a sky full of enemies. The broadcast came from nowhere and everywhere. It interrupted official channels. It appeared on personal devices. It played on mining equipment displays that were never meant to receive signals at all. Across the Dominion, billions of enslaved beings watched the same images. One ship fighting alone, refusing to surrender. The child did not understand everything she saw, but she understood enough. She understood that someone was standing up, someone was saying no. For the first time in her short life, she felt something warm bloom in her chest. Hope. Across 847 star systems, the same scene repeated. Slaves stopped working to stare at screens. Conquered soldiers whispered to each other in dark corridors. Species that had forgotten how to dream began dreaming again. The Vorathi could not stop the broadcast. They tried. They jammed frequencies and arrested technicians and threatened death to anyone caught watching. Nothing worked. The data pods from the reckoning had seeded the information too widely. It replicated faster than they could contain it. The galaxy was watching, and in the void where the battle still raged, Captain Amara Singh prepared for the end. The reckoning was dying. She felt it in the shudder of the deck plates, the groan of tortured metal, the failing hum of systems pushed far beyond their limits. Half her ship was gone. Her crew was scattered between functioning sections and escape pods drifting in the darkness. But she was still alive, and she still had weapons. High Commander Nalrek appeared on her screen one final time. His scales had darkened with stress. His eyes held something that might have been respect or might have been hatred, perhaps both. "You have fought well, human," he said. "Better than any species we have faced, but this ends now. Your ship is finished. Your mission is finished. Give me one reason not to destroy you completely." Singh coughed, blood flecked her lips. Her broken ribs screamed with every breath. "I already gave you 214 reasons, Commander. You executed every one of them." "The dead species," Nalrek's voice held no remorse. "They were weak. We removed weakness from the galaxy. It is the natural order." "There is nothing natural about what you do." Singh leaned forward, ignoring the pain. "You do not conquer because you must survive. You conquer because you enjoy it. You exterminate because it is easier than coexistence. You call it strength, but it is just cruelty wearing a uniform. You know nothing of us. I know everything about you. We studied your empire for 11 years before building this ship. We learned your tactics, your psychology, your history. You know what we found." Nalrek waited. "We found a species that is afraid," Singh continued. "Afraid of difference, afraid of change, afraid that if you stop conquering, you will have to face what you really are. You destroy others because you cannot stand to look at yourselves." "You dare." "I dare everything." Singh's voice rose, fueled by pain and exhaustion and something fiercer than both. "I am dying on a broken ship in the middle of nowhere, and I am not afraid. My crew is dying, and they are not afraid. We came here knowing we would probably not survive, and we came anyway. That is what strength looks like, Commander. Not your armadas, not your torture chambers, not your genocide. This. Standing up when you know you cannot win. Doing right when it costs you everything." Nalrek stared at her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he asked a question that surprised them both. "Why, you could have hidden. Your world is far from our borders. We might never have found you. Why reveal yourselves? Why sacrifice your ship and crew for species you have never met?" Singh smiled. It hurt her face. She smiled anyway. "Because someone had to." She cut the transmission. Around her, the few remaining crew members worked in silence. They knew the end was close. They could feel it in the dying pulse of the ship, the growing list of the corridors, the distant sounds of hull breaches and failing systems. Singh looked at each of them, the weapons chief with his broken arms still manning his station, the communications officer barely out of her teens, still keeping channels open, the damage control team leader, covered in burns, still fighting fires that could no longer be contained. These were her people. This was her ship. This was the moment everything had been leading to. She activated the reactor overload. Alarms screamed. The few remaining systems flashed warnings. The reckoning began its final countdown. "All hands, abandon ship. This is not a request." Escape pods launched. The last survivors fled into the void. Singh stayed on the bridge, watching her displays, watching the Vorathi fleet hesitate as they detected the building energy signature. The reckoning was going to die. But it was not going to die alone. Singh thought of Earth. She thought of blue oceans and green forests and 7 billion people who had voted to build this ship, knowing what it would be used for. She thought of the species the Vorathi had destroyed, the ones whose names she had memorized, the ones she carried with her into this final moment. "We remember," she whispered. And the reckoning exploded. The explosion painted the void white. 97 Vorathi ships too close to escape were consumed instantly. The shockwave damaged hundreds more. A sphere of pure destruction expanded outward, carrying the fury of a dying star. When the light faded, nothing remained of the INS reckoning. Nothing but escape pods drifting in the darkness. High Commander Nalrek stood frozen on his bridge. His tactical display showed the aftermath. Over 1,000 ships lost in total. The most devastating single-day losses in Vorathi military history, caused by one vessel, one crew, one species they had never encountered before. He should have felt victorious. The human ship was destroyed, the obstacle was removed, the path to Malvith Prime was clear. Instead, he felt hollow. "Commander," his tactical officer Furth approached carefully. "The battle is over. Should I give the order to proceed to Malvith Prime?" Nalrek did not answer immediately. He stared at the debris field where the reckoning had been. Somewhere in that mess of twisted metal and frozen atmosphere, the human captain had died. She had died standing on her bridge, refusing to leave, choosing to take as many Vorathi with her as possible. He had conquered 200 worlds. He had faced thousands of enemy commanders. None of them had troubled him the way this one human had. "The escape pods," he said finally. "How many survivors?" Furth checked his display. "Sensors detect approximately 800 pods. We estimate between 800 and 1,000 human survivors." "Order their recovery." Silence fell across the bridge. Vorathi officers exchanged confused looks. They did not take prisoners. They did not show mercy. Enemies were destroyed, not captured. "Commander," Furth's voice was careful, "our protocol is—" "I know our protocol." Nalrek turned to face his crew. "I am changing it. Recover the human survivors, treat their wounded, prepare them for transport." "To where, Commander?" "To their homeworld, Earth." The confusion deepened. A junior officer stepped forward, forgetting his place. "Commander, these humans killed over 1,000 of our ships. They must be punished. They must be returned." Nalrek's voice cut like a blade. "The humans did not attack us. We entered their protected space. They warned us to turn back. We refused. Everything that happened after that was the consequence of our choice, not theirs." He looked back at the debris field. "They fought with honor. They fought with restraint. They could have targeted our reactors and killed far more of us than they did. Instead, they aimed for engines and weapons. They tried to stop us without massacring us." He paused. "When was the last time we showed an enemy that kind of mercy?" No one answered. They all knew the answer was never. "We are returning to Dominion space," Nalrek announced. "The invasion of the outer spiral is postponed." "Postponed?" The junior officer's voice cracked with disbelief. "Commander, the High Council will. The High Council will hear my report and make their decision. Until then, we retreat. We repair. We consider what happened here today." The fleet turned. 3,000 ships had departed for conquest. Fewer than 2,000 returned. They carried with them the wreckage of their certainty, the ashes of their invincibility, and 800 human survivors who had no idea their war was not over. It was just beginning. Across the Dominion, the broadcast from the data pods continued spreading. Every attempt to suppress it failed. The images of the battle played on screens in slave quarters and military barracks and government offices. The story spread from system to system, growing with each retelling. "One ship. 8 hours. 1,000 Vorathi vessels destroyed. On 17 different worlds, oppressed species began whispering to each other, planning, organizing. For the first time in generations, they allowed themselves to imagine a future without chains. The first rebellion started on a factory world called Graven. Workers stopped their machines. Guards found themselves outnumbered by people who had suddenly remembered they were people. By the time Vorathi reinforcements arrived, the rebels had taken control of the entire industrial sector. More rebellions followed, scattered at first, then growing. Species that had been conquered so long ago they had forgotten their own histories began rediscovering old pride. The Dominion's communication networks filled with reports of uprisings, protests, and organized resistance. The Empire was cracking. Nalrek watched the reports from his quarters aboard the Eternal Silence. Each new rebellion felt like a nail in a coffin he had helped build. The human captain's words echoed in his mind. You destroy others because you cannot stand to look at yourselves. He had dismissed it as the ranting of a dying enemy. But now, in the quiet of his chambers, he wondered if she had seen something true. Furith appeared at his door. The tactical officer looked tired. Everyone looked tired now. Commander, the High Council has summoned you. They want a full accounting of the battle. I imagine they do. They are also asking about the human prisoners. There are voices calling for their execution. Nalrek stood. He straightened his uniform. He prepared to face whatever consequences awaited him. The humans will be returned to Earth, he said. That is not negotiable. Even if the Council demands otherwise. Nalrek looked at his officer, this member of a conquered species, who had served the Dominion faithfully for decades. He wondered, for the first time, what Furith really thought about his masters. Some things are more important than orders, Nalrek said. It was the most human thing he had ever spoken. 3 months after the Battle of the Void, a Vorathi shuttle landed on Earth. It carried a delegation of 5, led by High Commander Nalrek himself. They came under a white flag, transmitting peaceful intentions on all frequencies. Human fighter craft escorted them through the atmosphere but did not fire. The world below was green and blue, covered in oceans and forests and cities that sparkled with lights. It was smaller than most Vorathi homeworlds, less impressive, less powerful. And yet this small planet had built the ship that changed everything. Nalrek stepped onto human soil for the first time. The air was thick and warm, heavy with moisture and unfamiliar scents. Gravity pulled harder than he was used to. He understood now why the humans called their world a deathworld. It was harsh, demanding, the kind of place that bred survivors. A delegation waited for him on the landing field. Soldiers in formal uniforms, politicians in civilian clothes, and at the front, in a wheelchair pushed by a young officer, sat a woman. Nalrek had thought was dead. Captain Amara Singh. She was thinner now, her face pale and drawn. Bandages still wrapped her torso. Medical devices hummed softly around her chair. But her eyes were the same, dark and steady and completely unafraid. Commander Nalrek, she said, welcome to Earth. He approached her slowly. Around him, human soldiers tensed. They did not trust the Vorathi. They should not trust the Vorathi. Everything in their history said this meeting should end in blood. Captain Singh, he stopped before her chair. I was told you died on your bridge. I was thrown clear in the explosion. My crew found me floating in the debris. She smiled faintly. It seems the universe was not finished with me. No, Nalrek agreed. It seems it was not. They studied each other in silence. Enemies who had traded death between the stars. Opponents who had measured each other in fire and sacrifice. In another world, one of them would have destroyed the other by now. But this was a new world, a new moment. Why are you here? Singh asked. To negotiate peace. Nalrek glanced at the delegation behind her. The Dominion's High Council has authorized me to seek terms. We wish to end the conflict before it grows further. Before more of your conquered peoples rise up, you mean? Nalrek inclined his head. You have heard about the rebellions. We have done more than hear about them. We have been supporting them. Singh's smile sharpened. Medical supplies, communications equipment, strategic advice. Your empire is burning, Commander. We have been fanning the flames. He should have been angry. He found he was not. You planned this from the beginning, he realized. The reckoning was never meant to defeat us militarily. It was meant to inspire, to show that we could be resisted, to encourage others to fight.
Yes.
One ship, one battle, and you knew it would unravel an empire. We hoped, Singh's expression softened slightly. We were not certain, but we knew we had to try. Someone had to be the spark. Nalrek looked around at the humans watching him. He saw hatred in some faces, fear in others, and in a few something that might have been curiosity. They were not so different from the species he had conquered. Soft bodies, short lives, limited resources. But they had something his species had forgotten. They had the courage to sacrifice themselves for strangers. They had the vision to fight for a future they might never see. They had the stubborn, irrational, beautiful belief that right was worth dying for. The High Council wants peace, Nalrek said. They want an end to the rebellions, they want stability. And what do they offer in return? Withdrawal from 23 systems, including the Outer Spiral, recognition of human territory, release of prisoners from conquered species, an end to extermination campaigns. Singh raised an eyebrow. That is more than we expected. The Council is frightened. Nalrek did not hide the truth. They have seen what your one ship did. They know you have more ships. They know the rebellions are spreading faster than they can contain. They see their empire crumbling and they want to stop the bleeding. And what do you want, Commander? The question caught him off guard. No one had asked what he wanted in a very long time. He had always simply served, followed orders, conquered where he was told to conquer, destroyed where he was told to destroy. I want to understand, he said finally. I have spent 200 years conquering species I considered weak, and then I met you. One ship, one crew, willing to die for people they had never met. I want to understand how that is possible. Singh was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and took his clawed hand in her fragile human fingers. It is called compassion, Commander. It is the belief that other lives have value, that suffering should be prevented where possible, that the strong have a duty to protect the weak. She squeezed his hand gently. It is not weakness, it is the source of all our strength. Nalrek looked at their joined hands, scaled and soft, conqueror and defender. Perhaps, he said slowly, I have much to learn. Singh smiled. It was the first genuine smile he had ever seen from her. Perhaps we all do. Behind them, the sun set over a world that had changed the galaxy. A world of deathworlders who had chosen to give life instead of take it. A world that had built one ship, sacrificed one crew, and lit a fire that would burn through an empire. They remembered the dead, they fought for the living. And the universe was watching,